Hello, everybody. My name is Dina Vanderzalm. I'm an organizer with the Missouri Rural Crisis Center. Welcome to a very special edition of our Ask Me Anything series. I want to take a second here. If you are not already liking and following Missouri Rural Crisis Center on Facebook or subscribing on YouTube, take a second and do that now, and you can stay up to date on all of the things we have going on. But we wanted to do today a special question and answer session because we know people have a lot of questions. There's a lot of buzz about the November election, and we figured there was no better thing to do than to bring in two elections experts to really help field your questions. So we've gotten some in advance, but if you're watching and you have your questions, you can go ahead and type them into the comments section, and we will try to get through as many as we can. So without further ado, I would like to bring in our experts. First, we have Shane Scholler. If you are in Missouri, you have heard his name. He's a lifelong public servant, and he has been the Greene County clerk since 2014. We are thrilled to have him helping us answer our elections questions. And our second expert is Brianna Lennon. She is our Boone County clerk. Before she was our clerk here in Boone County, she was working with the Secretary of State's office, and we are thrilled to have her helping answer our questions too. So I want to go ahead and just kick us off. It is September 23rd. Yesterday we opened absentee. November election is in full swing. So how's it going for you guys now that absentee is up and rolling? What did yesterday look like?
So you want to go first? You want me, Brianna?
Oh, you can go first.
Okay. It was busy. It was a fun day, but it was a busy day because, really since before the August election, really I can even think back to July, we were getting requests for absentee ballots to be sent to people back then for the November election, and really even earlier than that with some folks. And so to be able to know that we could finally begin to send those to folks, and I think Brianna had similar numbers. We had a little over 9,000. And of course, we're getting more requests today that we're taking care of. And then to be able to open up in-person absentee voting, we had several hundred who came in yesterday to do that. Of course, we're still having a good number that are coming in today as well, like they did yesterday. And so, and then it was National Voter Registration Day. So we actually, our team was not only here on campus, but we try to go to a different location each year. This year we were at Drury campus with their students, helping them get registered. And then we were working with Empower Abilities, and they had a lot of questions about voting. And so it was just a great day to be able to talk about voting. And hey, by the way, if you're not registered, let's get that done now so you can make sure you can cast your ballot by November 3rd.
Yeah, we had a very similar experience. I think we had fewer in-person voters than Greene County did, but when we opened the doors at 8 o'clock, we had a line of 20 to 30 people. So it's been pretty steady, and compared to the 2016 election, particularly from our staffing standpoint, this is hitting a lot earlier than it did in the 2016 election. So people are definitely energized and ready to cast their ballot. And we did send out, we've got over 9,000 absentee ballots too that we've been collecting those applications for the earlier in the year. And with National Voter Registration Day being yesterday and all of the attention, especially on online voter registration, today ends up being busier than yesterday because we had 1,000 new voter applications coming in through the online portal. So while we had everything focused on yesterday, today ended up being busier.
Sounds about right. All the best laid plans. Surprise busy days. So you've mentioned, right? So we have in-person absentee happening. The most questions we've been getting from folks are, what is going on with mail-in, absentee? How are those different? What's going on for 2020 here?
I mean, the biggest difference is technically everyone could, in the state of Missouri, choose to vote prior to election day because of the mail-in ballot option. It's no excuse. You have to request it by mail or in person. That ballot is mailed to you, and then you have to get it notarized prior to mailing it back. And you do have to mail it back. You can't drop it off. Whereas absentee voting, I think most voters are at least familiar with that, even if they haven't used that option in the past. And there are 7 reasons currently that you can use to vote absentee. And of course, the legislature, when they brought forth the mail-in ballot option, they also added the COVID-19 reason, which is the 7th reason, which is basically if you're at increased risk for severe illness, if you contract COVID-19, or if you have contracted COVID-19, then you can apply that reason and vote absentee, and you don't have to get that notarized, just like reason number 2, which is health related as well. And so that's been the biggest change. And of course, we've seen a number of voters who, 65 or older or immunocompromised, if they qualify for that reason, they went ahead and checked that and request that ballot be mailed to them. And so they're being sent out as we speak. So.
And if somebody requested one, if they requested like a mail-in, but then they wanted to do absentee because they were confused that they needed a notary and they wanted one of the absentee reasons that doesn't need a notary, what should they do?
So it depends on what part in the process that they make that decision. So if they have requested a mail-in ballot and they receive it, and then they decide, oh, I want to vote absentee, they can come into our office and vote absentee. They will bring their mail-in ballot. They will have to surrender that. We will have to spoil it, and we can let them do an absentee ballot in person. And that's the simplest way to take care of it, instead of having to go through the process of working through a second mailing ballot, especially because if you're trying to account for the mail time, you may be too late by the time that you've received your ballot if you request it later on in the 6-week time period to be able to get one to be mailed to you. So what I would recommend is before you make your decision, and the big difference is there's 2 applications, or at least on the form, there's really 2 ways of asking for a ballot. If you're picking one with an excuse, then you know that there's going to be a notary exception in it, and it's stated on the applications. All of the applications say which ones do not require the notary. The mail-in option is on the bottom of that page and specifically says it has to be mailed in and it does have to have a notary. So pay close attention when you're making your application in the first place. But if you do have something that you want to switch from a mail-in to an absentee, come into the office to take care of it.
That is great advice. So we've gotten a question here from Michelle, kind of on that exact point, that says the walking in person absentee voting end. So if people want to come vote absentee at your office, what is the last day that they?
Oh, okay. November 2nd, if they want to come in and vote absentee. So they have up until 5 p.m. that night.
Okay, so right before election day, we have to do that business day the day before. We have another question coming in from one of our people down in Pulaski County, who, when they started voting yesterday, they did not have the ballots. As of this morning, they did not have them either. I think there's a big process that people don't understand. What is the vendor process? How do each county handle it? If you could speak a little bit to what went on in the couple of counties that don't have ballots and kind of what the process for fixing it.
Sure.
Go ahead.
It's very individualized. It's a very individualized process for each county. Boone County has always printed our own, but we're one of the very few ones that programs and print their own ballots. So all of our absentees are printed in-house, and we use a ballot printer to do the mail absentees and to use our official ballots. But it is extremely common for clerks to use printers for all of their ballots. And Shane can probably speak more to that too.
Yeah, when we changed election equipment companies, actually went with the same company that Boone County is currently using. We both went through the bid process here in the past couple of years, and that was one of the features that we went ahead with this company we're with, was we can now print ballots in-house. So if something like that happened, we can be prepared for it. And this may be an option that the county clerk there decided they did not want to use, but one of the options that you can choose is you could certainly have a ballot on like 8.5 by 14 or 8.5 by 11. They could vote that, and then bipartisan teams later on can reconstitute that on behalf of the voter to be fed into the machine. So that's one option that a county clerk can use. And I know that county clerk there is just in the first couple of years. They may not have been aware of that option, but certainly I think we would both agree there are occasions things are out of your hands and you don't necessarily know how to address it at the time, but certainly know that I'm sure they're trying to resolve that, because you don't want to get those phone calls and that frustration from voters when that happens.
No, and I think people don't realize how much the elections is a full year issue that y'all are working on. The average voter thinks of it as like the cycle that I'm about to engage in, and then I'm done. So all of that vendor stuff and the printing and how much it varies by county. We have another question that we got submitted before. So for people who want to vote in person on November 3rd, what are some of the precautions people are taking at polling places so people feel safe? Is that statewide? Does that vary by county? What is it going to look like for folks on November 3rd?
You can go first. I think that we're pretty similar.
Yeah, I think all of us since the March election have been taking precautionary measures to make sure voters are protected. And after each election, we tried to improve from that. So for example, in August, we had the plexiglass shields set up, which we also had in the June election for election judges, so that as people came to check and to vote, there was a shield between them and the voter. We have social distance markers that the Secretary of State's office provided to help keep people spaced 6 feet apart as they come in to vote. And then we are providing pens that, as the voter used them, we then sanitize them before they're put back out there for the voters to use. And they can be used on touchscreen equipment, or they can be used to vote the ballot as well. And then, for example, in Greene County, we had 2 people during the August election that they were literally taking, sanitizing solution to each of the voting areas as people were voting, and sanitizing those areas after the voter was finished voting, and trying to keep the doors in and out of the polling location clean as well. So those are just measures that we try to take to help give the voter confidence that, when they came to vote, we were doing the best we could to make sure that it was a safe and clean environment in terms of any potential spread by contact.
We're very similar. We've also hired, in most cases, they're high school students to help make sure that the polling places are all clean and sanitized. We also have the plexiglass shields. Our election judges are all wearing masks, and we have a ton of hand sanitizer. So based on what we've heard as feedback for the August election and the June election, it seems to be going very well. Although one of the things that will be different this time is a much higher turnout. So I think that's going to have an impact on what social distancing looks like, because having 4 people in a socially distanced line looks very different from having 4 people that can stand right next to each other. So it may end up requiring more space, and a lot of our polling places are on the smaller side. So we've tried to account for that by having central polling locations like Mizzou Arena. But I do anticipate that we're going to have lines at some locations, but that they will move. The biggest problem with lines is when people are standing in lines that are not moving, or standing in lines for hours and hours. But one of the really great things about the devices that we use to check in poll workers is that we can monitor the check-in time from the office. So if we start seeing any kind of lags or there's a problem, then we can help address that. But in general, people move through the line quickly. We're watching that happen in real time now with absentee voting. It's not taking that long for voters to fill out their ballot. It's only two-sided, so it's not like there's a ton of things that people are having to, spend a lot of time doing. So overall, I think the preparations for polling places are going very well, and they've been well received so far.
And I know obviously you can only speak for Boone and Greene personally, but do you get a sense that this is happening in more counties or not? Or if our folks are out in some of these rural areas, might it be very different?
I mean, I think most of our, fellow county clerks and election boards are doing what they know is best for their voters. Now, one of the things that I think Randall will agree is occasionally you'll get an election judge who doesn't follow. Like, for example, we asked all election judges to please wear a mask or at a minimum a face shield. And occasionally we have election judges that don't follow the direction and instruction they were given. And so, if you'll let our office know, we certainly try to address that on the day of the election. And so it's very hard when you have almost 600 people on the field that day, just by, just statistical odds, you're going to have a handful that unfortunately aren't following the direction they were given during the training, whether it's, how to properly ask for ID, whether it's how to check them in, et cetera. It's an interesting, situation that can occur during election day. So just feel free to let our office know, and we'll try to address that as quickly as possible.
Yes, I will echo that. If you have any concerns that happen at polling places, please keep us in the loop, because we can contact the poll workers directly. We can address those issues directly, and it really helps to let us know what's going on, so that, especially if it's impacting voters, we need to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. So we've gotten a question here from Angela for Angie that says, when do you think you'll be able to call the election? So we have folks at the national level saying it'll be weeks before we know because of mail-in, because of absentee. What are we thinking on Missouri? Are we expecting a delay? As the folks running the show that day, what do you foresee maybe happening?
I mean, as I've told folks, because we're balanced it out where people can request, we didn't just suddenly shift to all vote by mail. Unless we have an equipment error issue, or potentially sometimes you'll have one precinct that may not get their results in quickly because they had some, issues there at the precinct. We've had that happen. Seems like on every election, we got one precinct that lags behind all the others for whatever the reason may be. We plan to have our results out that night, but we have had, issues with our equipment loading the results in and reporting the results. But we're going to stay positive, hope that none of those issues occur, because that happened in 2016 when we were trying to report results that night. We were with the previous system, and the computer got to the point where we're not upload the results. And so I was having to tweet the results out to people instead of putting them out on the computer. So, there's always these little things that happen. It seems like that you do your best to plan for. But I think here in our state, unless there's a close race, and that does happen, for example, during major elections, one thing to think about is we sometimes will get hundreds of absentee ballots even on the day of the election. And so we don't always have a team that can go through, properly open, separate, and take care of those ballots before they're put in the equipment that night. But for example, in 2016, there was potential that the Senate race was going to be close. And so I had everyone stay until we knew it would be close. Had it been close, we would have went ahead and taken care of those absentee ballots that night, just because we don't want people waiting until the next day to find out what the margin would be, especially in a statewide race like that where everyone's watching.
Yeah, we've had the really good fortune in Boone County that we've always had a high-speed tabulator. So our absentee results have almost always been our first results reported. But even in August, that ended up not being the case because of the number of absentees that we got. So it's going to take longer than what I think we're used to locally, but it's not going to take days and days and days. It would probably be a late night for us in Boone County. I'm pretty much guaranteed that it's going to be a late night anyway. But the other thing to remember too is calling an election is really difficult to actually define because none of the results, even the ones that we report on election night, are official. We have 2 weeks to verify and go through all of the processes we're supposed to do, like a recount on our random samples. And all of those things take time, and all of those things verify that we have the correct results. And then after that, the Secretary of State's office has another couple weeks to verify and certify the full state results when they come back from the clerks. So really, our official results and what they really are not done until about a month afterwards. So it's important to keep that in mind because nothing has changed with regard to that. Those deadlines have always been there. Just keep it in mind. I try to remind people of that.
That's a good one. All right, we have a big question here. It's got multiple parts. I do want to throw it up on the screen though. So for folks who just joined us, we're talking about all things elections and voting rights with 2 of our wonderful county clerks here in Missouri. I want to pull out this first part. So if people want to hand drop off the ballot, let's address again what the difference in options for mail-in and absentee are for returning those. And then also if we could look at what people need to do to update their records to make sure that we have, all the valid voter information. Brianna, if you want to take this one first.
So first, the mail-in ballot option. So if you picked a notarized non-absentee mail-in ballot option, you can put that in the mail. We've worked very closely with our local post office in Boone County to designate one of the mailboxes outside of the Boone County government building on the courtyard side of the building to be considered a ballot drop-off box, which means they're going to be paying more attention to it. And then there's also a ballot box designation on the post office box outside of the downtown Columbia location. And that's on 5th Street at Walnut. So those are 2 locations that we know for sure that have been designated as ballot drop boxes. And so put anything that needs to be mailed in there, the notarized mail ballots, or even an absentee ballot if you didn't want to come into the building. With regard to updating your information, so that was a reference to the fact that we send out emails when we send out the ballots, and we send out emails when we receive the ballots, as long as we have an email on file. So if you send us an email to our clerk at boonecountymo.org and give us your name and your birth date and your address and your email address, we can just update your email address. That's not like a critical piece of your voter record. So just provide verifying information and your email, and that will get you on the list to do that. It will also get you sample ballots emailed to you if you want to do that as well.
Fantastic. So we have a question. If they vote absentee, will a person's name still be on the election rolls for November 3rd? How does that?
Yeah, I don't, unless they decide to move, and, I don't know how they'd have to move out of the county, and then they couldn't vote where they moved to, but they could certainly change their registration at that point. But certainly if they stay within the county, their name would not be removed from, our voter registration rolls.
Or your precinct register, there's going to be a little flag on it that says absentee received. And so that's how the poll worker is going to know that, yeah, you're a eligible voter, but the elections office has already indicated that they have your absentee ballot, so you can't vote in person. It prevents you from voting in person. If you have requested your ballot and not sent it back, it's going to say absentee sent, and that's going to kick off a whole process for verifying whether we've received it, or if you still have the ballot, if you never received the ballot, it goes down that path.
I said, I think you understood the nature of that question better than I did, Brian. I wasn't thinking they were, so good job.
That is very helpful though. So I want to flag a question that we got submitted beforehand, because earlier y'all were talking about with the COVID precautions, just how many people that takes and the extra bodies you brought in. So can we talk for a second just about poll workers, and if people are interested in being a poll worker, what should they do? What are the deadlines for that and the rules around it? Because it seems like there's always a call for poll workers up very close to the election.
I would say we don't have a deadline to be an election judge. We've literally had to call people the morning of because someone's not there and say, hey, can you help? Actually, and it was removed at some point from Missouri statutes, but there used to be a time period where you as an election official, if someone was standing in line to vote and you didn't have an election judge, you could actually go get that person and require them by law to serve as an election judge. I'm not sure how successful that worked out, but supposedly election authority could do that. But, all kidding aside, one of the interesting things about what we've seen during this COVID-19 time period is people are really responding well. Matter of fact, we've had a better response to election judges in this year, especially since the August election, than we've ever had it. And I think it's because in years past, people think, well, they've already got people that are there, people are trained. And now people understand there is a need because some people that normally would serve for health-related reasons are not going to be. And so I've really been grateful to our community and how they've responded in terms of that. And Facebook put out information, I guess, last weekend, and we had an enormous response to that was sent into our office. And so now the best way, and I apologize, I feel like I'm filibustering here, the best way to get election judges is get in contact with your central committee of the party that you prefer if you have a party. So whether it's Democratic, Republican, Constitution, Libertarian, Green Party, their chair people are actually supposed to give each of us year prior a list more than twice the amount of election judges you need on election day for November. I don't think that happens a whole lot across the state anymore. But the reason I say that is if we get someone that responds and they just check the box of their party, they're that party, but we would much rather have that validated through the party itself versus just the application coming in independent of the party. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, I would echo what Shane said. The response has been really wonderful. I know that a lot of federal organizations like the Elections Assistance Commission has pushed out National Poll Worker Day and tried to recruit people, and it has really been working. I mean, we've gotten a lot of applications. What we do find, and this kind of goes to Shane's point about party affiliation, is that we end up kind of lopsided, which can be problematic when we're trying to fill polling places. So every polling place has to have a bipartisan team of judges. We can't just have all of one party. We can't even have a majority of one party. So when people are applying, it's really great. Don't be offended if we don't call you to use you and we're still asking for poll workers to be recruited, because we may have enough of one party, but we may need more of another. So that's been the historic situation here too, is that it's always a little bit trickier to find one party over the other. That's still true today. And I think that we have sent out our email this week. We sent out our email asking for anybody that had been a judge before or had indicated interest, whether they were planning to come back, because we're going to start training in a week or two. And we will see when we get those responses back where we really do need to fill in at some of our polling locations.
And just to clarify, do you have to be a poll worker in the county where you're registered? If you vote and work, if you work in another county and you might be able to like help in that neighboring county or something, what are the rules around that?
Yeah, so you do need to be a registered voter in the county where you want to be a poll worker. There are ways clerks can talk to each other and get permission from each other. That really is the way that it's written into the law, is that if that's going to happen, you need like written permission from a neighboring clerk to say, yes, you can take some of my voters. So it's not super common, I don't think. At least in Boone County, it's not. There's not a lot of people that want to cross county lines just to serve as a poll worker.
I would say that's probably true. I want to go back up here. We had another question come in talking about reporting on election night. So it seems like some news stations are getting updates way before the Secretary of State's website is posting different results. How do results get reported in, and where can people look for the most up-to-date information on the night of?
I think it depends on the county. There are still some small counties that, which I think is amazing, and I hope to go there one time when we don't have an election here, and they do, where they go and everybody gathers on the courthouse square and they post the election results and read them out loud. So there are some that are still like that. Ours get posted to our website, and the way that they get posted to the state results is by our offices entering them into the statewide system. So we get the results, we have the results. Obviously, I can throw them up on our website because it comes in PDF format and what I have, and I can then enter the PDF into the statewide site. So there may be a lag in having the state have all of the information that I already have because I just printed a PDF to put it on my website. There's also sometimes AP stringers. The Associated Press will go to different counties and sit there and wait for the results to come off of the printer. And then they have the results faster than anyone too. And I know the Secretary of State's office has a AP feed that goes directly to them. But again, that's all dependent on how fast the counties report their results to the Secretary.
That is always an adventure, but it keeps all the like poll watching. We have to refresh the page. It makes it exciting on the night of. We had someone ask, so we clarified that if people had, requested absentees months ago, they went in the mail just this week. So from your perspective, how long should folks wait to follow up with you if they haven't gotten their ballots? When should they be concerned and touching base to make sure nothing got lost in translation along the way?
I mean, I would say sometime middle to late next week if you don't receive it. We have up to 5 days starting yesterday to send those out. And so just based upon the Postal Service, they're going to mail it out as first class mail, but even then it can still take a couple of days depending upon, especially when you have 9,000, we didn't get a chance to deliver them all in one day. We would like to have done that, but it does take a few days for that to get out there. But by middle of next week, late next week, please let us know and we'll follow up on that for you.
And that feels like a good time to really hit the deadlines that are coming up and what you recommend as far as people, if they're planning to mail something back, your best experience with the top dates on those things should be.
My own opinion is if you're going to put your ballot in the mail, don't delay. We've put that out on front of our web page in terms of 2020 voting options, and we just keep reemphasizing don't delay. You have till the 21st to request your ballot be mailed to you, but even then we're going to start a week beforehand encouraging people, if you haven't made your request, you're planning to, please do it now. And simply because the best thing about our election systems is they're done by we the people, and it's also the most challenging thing about our election systems is because occasionally human error does present itself. And so whether it's potentially an issue in our office we have to resolve, or somehow the Postal Service has a mistake, or even as the voter, when you mail that back, if you didn't sign that ballot, or wasn't notarized it needed to be, or the address has changed since we received it, we want to be able to follow up with the voter to get that resolved, because the closer we get to the election, being able to, if the voter cannot come in and resolve that personally, try to get that ballot, resolved can be much more easy said than done. So we're trying to do all we can to take care of that too.
Well, I know we have taken a lot of your time here, and this is a very busy week and season for you guys. I haven't seen any new questions come in the last minute here, too. So I want to thank you both very, very much for being our wonderful experts and answering all these questions, and everybody for watching and asking your questions. I hope we got to everyone. I want to thank my coworker, Jamie, who is running the brains behind the operation here. Remembering those deadlines, folks, October 7th to register. As we said time and again, 21st of October is your absolute last time to request that absentee. And we really turn that around as fast as possible to make sure you feel confident in it. Do either of you have any final pitches on best tips, voter education?
You know, one of the things I think we both talked about, if you see something on Facebook and you think it's wrong, feel free to contact our office, because one of the things that we're seeing is through social media is one state does do it different than our state, and someone thinks our state does it the same way. And so one of the best things that can be helpful is find out from your local election authority, and because we don't see everything that's posted on social media. And so that can be really helpful to voter, because, you know, voters have good reason to have questions, especially during a time period like this. And so that's one way that folks on here can be really helpful, is helping make sure those voters get their answers correctly.
And I would also add, make sure that you are checking your voter record now. So there is no time like the present to go onto, you can go on the Secretary of State's website and look yourself up. If you're in Boone County, you can go to our website and look at your voter record. Make sure that if you've moved, that your address is up to date, because it doesn't automatically update just because you've changed it with the post office. Check to make sure that all of your other information is correct. We have our sample ballots in the polling places on the website too. So if you're planning to vote in person, check now. The Secretary of State's website and our website have polling place lookup tools that are now live, so you can use that. And just make your plan now for how you want to vote this election.
Yeah, Shane, to your point, I mean, I think the biggest thing we've seen from other states is the idea of ballot collecting, of like people wanting to volunteer and help and collect ballots and turn them in, which is allowable in some states, but
Please don't do that.
not a thing.
Yeah,
Do not do that.
Yeah.
What is the rule around, so for absentee, it's what, a close family member is allowed to turn them in if someone is not able to take them in person?
Yes, correct. Like your dad or mom or grandfather, for example. Second degree of affinity is essentially the way that's defined. So,
yeah, with good intention, but don't be a good friend and take their.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's
a very good flag.
Future, you know, that may be something that the legislature addresses or is addressed on the initiative petition. But right now, you know, by all means, we want to make sure that ballot counts. And that's why the drop-off boxes are not there, because we didn't want people dropping off a mail-in ballot. And that was guidance we got from Secretary of State in terms of that. And so we definitely want every ballot to count. And, you know, if you've got that ballot mailed to you, you know, again, just turn that around as quickly as possible. If you want to come drop it off, we're open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're more than happy to receive that on behalf of the voter if it's an absentee ballot. If it's not, you know, our local postal service, if you're mailed inside our county, they turn it around very quickly. Now, if you're out of state and you're watching this, by all means, the sooner the better. Don't wait, because we can't account for what happens outside of our mail-in areas and how quickly they'll respond to that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I think people are well informed on how they're going to make their plan to vote safely, maybe vote early, do not vote often. And I'm looking forward to a great November cycle here. Thank you both very much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dina.